Well, Alan Johnston, one of the two creators of legendary ad campaigns like Cricket's Come On, Aussie Come On and Qantas's I Still Call Australia Home, has turned his hand to a new campaign to relaunch the iconic food brand Rosella. The 120-year-old company, famous for its tomato sauce, of course went into receivership in 2012 but was bought out of that by SA Brands last year. Well, here's a quick look at the new ad.
Only the best to you from Rosella. Grown right here in Australia.
Yeah, that distinctive voice there. Alan Johnston, of course, one half of Mojo, writing that new ad and singing the jingle himself for the campaign. Well, to talk more about great Australian creative ad work and the current state of marketing in Australia, we're joined by Jack Watts-Curry, co-founder and chairman Jack Singleton. Jack, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Bridie.
Yeah,
nice to be here.
Firstly, I wanted to get your thoughts on, you know, the way you sell a budget or an iconic food brand. You know, obviously we're in budget mode this week. Just in advertising, I mean, are there basic principles that apply that always are going to work?
I'd rather be selling Rosella tomato sauce in the budget. A bit easier to swallow for most of us. Look, the principles are the same. You think about the target audience, who are you trying to make this message appealing to, and you know, you focus on that audience. Try and think of that audience as a particular man or a woman. In the case of FMCGs, we call them fast-moving consumer goods like tomato sauces and soups, we think of a mum, and you target the message towards that mum. In the case of the budget, well, as I say, you know, you can't please all the people all the time, but they've done a good job at irritating most of the people.
Jack, tell us, does Alan wrote and sang the jingle himself?
Yeah.
How rare are people like that in advertising? And are they still pretty much in demand if you can find that talent?
How rare, I think, be best summed. I mean, Mo and Joe together. Mo died a few years back. Not just rare, I think they're the only two blokes like that in the world.
Wow.
As a team. And today, Joe is like the last of his kind, and his kind was only ever two. I mean, you've got to think, growing up in the 70s and 80s, when I first met Alan Morris and Alan Johnston, it was like meeting Cold Chisel or Nick Sessa, Australian Cross. You know, these guys had written Come On, Aussie Come On, that was not just a great advertising bit of music, but it was released as a single. 1978, 1979, it was #1 on the national singles chart for 6 weeks. These guys didn't just create advertising, they created and are still creating, or Joe is now on his own, creating things that, you know, they get in here. You know, it's not very often, no disrespect to a Harvey Norman or a Meyer, or very rarely do you have people singing. Actually, you might sing Go Harvey Go, but probably more ironically than actually loving that. But
sure.
But what Alan or the two Allans, Mo and Joe, were great at doing, what Joe's still great at doing, is creating stuff that connects with people emotionally.
And I mean, do creatives, they need to believe in the product? I mean, or can they turn their talent on and off from your experience?
Depends how big the check is. No, I mean, I was having a chat to Joe, and the reason Joe is not on here talking about his work, he goes, Jack, he said, mate, I hate these things. They stress me. I'm old. You go and do it and have some fun with it. And I'm not a business partner of Joe's. I love him as a mate, and I love his advertising. But Rosella, I know he was chatting to the Rosella company for a couple of years leading up to the creation of this ad. I know on this particular occasion, as I'm sure with most of others in the past, but, you know, it wasn't about the money. It was Joe's genuine love for an Australian icon brand that Rosella is, being bought by an Australian-owned company. And it is an incredible sauce. I mean, our ad agency recently did some work for one of the competitors, some pitch work, and we did side-by-side taste tests in at the agency, all the sauces on little saucer plates, put them in, dipped it with chopsticks, tasted it on its own, tasted it on sausages, on steak. Rosella came out #1. And that's against brands with a lot more market share. Rosella is a great tasting tomato sauce.
They'll probably be shifting a fair bit more of it, maybe. Tell me, do other advertisers see that and think, gee, maybe we've got an iconic product, why don't we have a jingle?
I think what a lot of marketing people do is they tend to rely very heavily on research. The larger food companies, the Unilevers, I think the idea of them briefing a guy like Joe and saying, can you do us a great ad? It's not the way big companies work. It's not saying one way's
It's
right,
taking a
other
bit of
way's
the gut
wrong.
feel out of it.
It takes the gut feel out of it. It's more, have we ticked the boxes? Here are the core messages we need to put in there. Does it tick all the boxes? As opposed to saying to a great professional, Joe, here's what we need to sell. You know who the target audience is. Hasn't changed since the 70s. It's the grocery buyer. A few more men who are grocery buyers now, but it's essentially the grocery buyer. What do they want to do? The number one job the grocery buyer has to do, there's always a budget they have to work within, but they want to put food on the table that their family says, Mum or Dad, this tastes great. And if you don't have that quality of product and appetite appeal in the ad and that emotional engagement, then when Mum's in there, I mean, David Ogilvy said advertising has this incredible power, you know, to move the hand from there to there. And if you look in the tomato sauce or the tomato soup or the soup section of a supermarket, it's not a big section. You know, you're there, there's Rosella, there's Heinz, and if you've got that emotional connection with the brand and the pricing is equivalent, you'll go for the one that you think your family's going to be happier with.
We're running out of time. Just one quick question, because we've seen the plans for the merger of Omnicom and Publicis cancelled last week. I just want to get your view kind of on the state of the market here in Australia at least, and whether that would have been a good thing or a bad thing.
The cost of entry to start an advertising agency, whether it be a media agency, a channel planning agency, strategic creative, it's getting lower and lower and lower. I mean, we started our agency 16 years ago, and we were buying computers for $5,000 a computer, and we thought that was cheap. You know, you don't need bromide rooms, you don't need all that stuff. So I think as the bigger guys get bigger, that merges off, maybe on again in the future. It just creates more opportunity for small, locally owned, the Rosella of advertising agencies to pop up.
Yeah. Look, really appreciate you coming on, Jack. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
Jack Singleton there. Coming up on Media Week, the legal battle between 7 and 10 over John Stevens being heard in the Supreme Court this week. All the details next.